Guns and Ammo Buzz Podcast. Jack Oller, managing editor of Guns and Ammo Magazine, joins me, as well as Antonio Acitelli. And this is Antonio's first podcast with us so far on the Buzz. And appreciate you joining us. Antonio is now the digital editor for Guns and Ammo Magazine, meaning he is all that is brilliant with gunsandammo.com. Thank you for maintaining our website and working so great with us. And if you're familiar with Antonio's name, he's actually the associate editor up until recently, until Joe Kurtenbach left. And then, we had an opening on the digital side, and we reimagined what that role was. And Antonio's done an amazing job learning very quickly how to incorporate things such as SEO, as he integrates postings from Guns and Ammo Magazine, as well as assignments on new content. So how are you enjoying your new role over there?
Well, Eric, I got to say, I'm really happy with how it's going along so far. I always had tons of fun working on the print side with G&A, getting articles assigned, finding out new stuff about firearms. And the website has just been that with even more opportunities to kind of go out and find some cool stuff that people just really want to read about. And, it gives us the opportunity as well to integrate video, get direct links to things, and integrate with the magazine on top of that. So I'm more than happy with everything we're doing on the digital side right now, and it's always good to see what the print side's doing too.
But hey, this is one of my favorite days of every month. And if you remember yourself, there's people often joke and reference running to their mailboxes when they were a kid to open and see whether or not the latest issue of Guns and Ammo magazine was in there waiting for them, only to shuffle back to their house disappointed if it wasn't. And today is one of those days for me. But we've all kind of grown up now. We're in the business, and the last since we press, I have to reference the April issue of Guns and Ammo on these proofs, and that's right. I still edit paper proofs with all the red marks on it. And, until we get our hard copies in the mail, it doesn't really seem real to me. But today's the day that we get our advanced copies. And we're here to talk today about the April 2025 issue, which we've all been working on very hard. Now, just as a reminder, it was sent to press January 31st last month. Today is February 11th. The digital issue gets published on the app on February 25th. And then it will appear on sale everywhere at newsstands no later than March 4th. Now, we also like to say, depending on the zip codes and what part of the United States you live on, subscribers should be seeing their copies also arrive around that week of February 25th, though it's very difficult to provide an exact date when they can expect it. But Jack, you had your nose in deep on this issue. I mean, you see all the rough drafts that come in from the writers, and you help process them. You also work with Lisa Buning, in the early copy editing stages before the magazine then goes to Mike Ulrich, our art director, for design, layout. And, Mike assembles all those pieces, the art elements, as well as those draft copies, and then puts them together. And then that's really when we start circulating our issue in layout form, how it'll appear in the magazine a few times before we release it to press. How do you think the April issue went, and what were some of the highlights for you?
Absolutely. Putting together the magazine, it is a involved process to say the least. But I want to start though real quick. You talked about how people always look forward to their issue coming in the mail. One of the things I look forward to whenever a new issue comes out, I go to my local newsstands and I like to grab the copies of Guns and Ammo and then put them in front of competing magazines. So if you guys are ever in the greater Columbia, Missouri area and you see 10 copies of Guns and Ammo in a row on the newsstand, I probably made through my way through the newsstand at some point just to make sure that Guns and Ammo gets as much. I'm sure I'm the bane of retail, newsstand. The employees that set that up because somebody has to go back behind me and re-clean up the newsstand. But it's no, that's something I think that sets Guns and Ammo apart though is that we have such a in-depth editorial review. There's so many layers to it that by the time we go from raw submission to a copy shows up in your mailbox or is on a newsstand, It's gone through several layers of editing. We're verifying accuracy. You do so much amazing work with historical references. I always enjoy, what you catch that, by the time it gets from Lisa copy editing to your final review, there's always something to catch that can make each issue better. And I think that's what makes Guns and Ammo so great, is that it goes through that process, that by the time you see it on the newsstand, it is a fully reviewed, to be as accurate as possible, and to be as fun to read as possible too. It's not just about technical accuracy. We want our readers to enjoy each issue. There's a layer of entertainment on top of the technical information that we like to bring to the table.
In this issue, the newsstand version, I say, and newsstand meaning we don't have a label down here for putting the address. So this has a barcode right here. So this would have been this is a newsstand version. Newsstand, we have the Taurus GX2. Pay less, care. And what I love about this is, Antonio, this is another one of your feature reviews. Tell us a little bit about what you thought of the Taurus GX2.
Happy to. So, for a bit of background on when I first found out about the GX2, I was invited by Taurus out to Gunsight Academy over in Paulden, Arizona, to uh, give the whole rigmarole of Gunsight with their testing, their desert environment, really taking the rough and tumble of it, uh, and taking it for a ride, which really kind of immediately spoke to me that Taurus was serious about this one, because especially for the price point of the GX2, I believe it's $299 right off the bat for the base black version that I tested, probably $250 when you're having it. That's MSRP. In stores, you're looking at $250 with a rebate, maybe even $200. So for that kind of testing right off the bat to take it to Gunsight, they had a lot of confidence behind the design, and honestly, it really did prove itself. That thing was going through hundreds of rounds. Sure.
Cool. And as everybody will, it's funny. If something has a malfunction, you guys never report it, or something's inaccurate, you never report it. Like, we ourselves to a really high editorial standard here. And as I read the article, you actually experienced some issues with the magazine while you were at Gunsight. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what Taurus did?
Certainly. So one of the things that was apparent with the GX2, with the pre-production models that we were working with, was the magazines were still very early on. They were uncoated, just flat metal, and they had some issues specifically with the desert environment and whenever you were dropping a mag. So naturally, we were doing reloading drills where if you dropped a mag with, say, 5 rounds left over in it, those would get stuck in the magazine. They'd go 90 degrees. The whole magazine carrier would get stopped. And attempting to fix the issue, either have all the rounds just fly right out, or some cases double feeding when reinserting the mag. And we brought those concerns up to Taurus, and the engineers on hand there were aware of the issue, and were making it their top priority to take care of it. And they ended up delaying the launch of the GX2 by several months just to make sure that their magazines that came with the production guns were flawless. And I got to say, that's the first thing that I tested out the box with these. Took the magazine, loaded up some dummy rounds in it, and just started dropping it in the dirt. Didn't experience the problem. They're properly coated, and they're so smooth now at this point that you could turn the gun upside down with a loaded mag and just drop the mag right in, um, and it would load just fine.
The replacement pistol that you received after leaving Gunsight months later, uh, you're in Tennessee right now. So you received another sample in Tennessee that was closer to the production version, and they sorted the magazines.
Yep, magazines were sorted, and then the gun itself was running really well through all the range testing. Um, really didn't experience any issues aside from that. They fixed what they said they were aware of and the concerns we brought up.
So a lot of people are going to ask real quick, and I don't mean to keep harping on it, but it is our cover story. The GX4 and the say the G3 models or G3C. What's the GX2 do differently than it? Now, I got to say the GX2 looks a lot like my GX4. There is some that are different, but now it costs less. I mean, a GX4 can cost upwards north of $400 when you find one. This one's less. What's different about it?
So the biggest differences you're going to find on this gun is, first and foremost, there is no optic ready version. There's not going to be an optics plate. You're going to have a very standard steel white dot sight. And on top of that, the machining that went into this handgun was not in the USA. This is a Brazilian made gun. It's going to have some features from an imported gun. So it's going to have the required manual safety, and it's also going to have a required indicator to show the gun is loaded. Those are both going to be consequences of it coming from outside the US. Now, what they've done this time, though, is much like with many of the guns coming out of Turkey right now, the machines and the programs used to create this gun are much more refined. They can take it and put it through a CNC process in Brazil that keeps material and manual labor costs down so that they can get this gun at a much better price point. And that's where you get that $299 MSRP. With that, you are going to see a few things that were sacrificed, like there is no replaceable backstrap, like with the GX4. There's a very straightforward handgun, but what Taurus indicated to me, because I asked them what the niche they wanted to cover with this gun. And if you look at the G2C right now that Taurus has, that's a gun in a similar price point, similar features, but it lacks the form factor, it lacks the reliability, and it lacks the general addition of features that the GX4 has put Taurus on the market for. And the GX2 is going to gradually be replacing that, in my mind, as their new shooter, budget carry gun. And even for more advanced shooters, it shoots great. So if you just want a cheap, easy way to practice your 9mm at the range, this will be a viable option as well.
Right. So you're getting the reliability, the functionality, and the form factor of the GX4, but in a more affordable price with less features. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. All right. So on the other major story for this issue, and Jack, I'm going to pitch this one over to you. Jim Tarr reviewed the Ross Martin RM1S. It's a 9mm pistol. Some would say like a G19 clone. It's got we put a Trijicon RMR on it because it actually comes out of the box with an RMR adapter plate. Now you can contact Ross Martin and get adapter plates for any other number of red dot sights, but it comes with the RMR plate, so we put a Trijicon on it. And we've also evaluated both this Taurus and that Ross Martin with the new Streamlight TLR X7 sub. And can you tell us a little bit about what Jim considered about that pistol, what your takeaways are of that RM1S?
Yeah, Jim had a really good experience with the new RM1S. Ross Martin has been a fun company to watch get started and grow. They're a Texas-based, true American manufacturer, which I think that's something the market is been looking for more. Is that I want an affordable, everyday carry handgun, but that's truly U.S. made. We've seen a large rise of Turkish manufacturers that are all making really nice guns. They are, very, very affordable, but there's still a huge market that says, no, I only want to buy American. And Ross Martin is filling that gap in the market. I mean, these are sub $500 perfect options for everyday carry, concealed carry, off-body carry in a backpack. And so we saw, their first more full-size handgun, the RM, 1S is their subcompact model. And Tar had a really good experience all across the board. Accuracy was excellent. He said he didn't have any issues with reliability or cycling the firearm. And Tar, he puts it through a pretty rigorous testing procedure from his pistol competition days and law enforcement days. He knows what a pistol needs to do, and he had a fantastic experience with the new Ross Martin.
I've shot both the RM1S and I have an RM1C. I reviewed the RM1C last year when Ross Martin was stood up as a company. Man, what an accurate pistol that was. I mean, it was really hard to ignore. And it's amazing how a company who was unknown 2 years ago can suddenly rocket to the attention that they've been receiving. They're doing something right.
Absolutely. I want to say I really enjoy the aesthetics of their pistols. It's subtle, and that's it's is that the number one feature we're looking for in a concealed carry handgun? No, right? We want reliability, we want accuracy, we want it to operate the way it should be. But I also appreciate when a gun looks good doing all of that as well. And I really like what Ross Martin does to the design of their handguard, to the design of their grips and the slide of the pistol. It's a very clean looking gun that I appreciate the aesthetics of the new Ross Martin pistols too.
Sure. Well, I'm going to take back and look at our departments real quick. Uh, for we have, of course, reader blowback. Now, we always make reader blowback the first column in every issue. That's because the readers matter the most. So even before my editorial, we have that reader blowback. I wrote my editorial this month, first column in the department section, on handguns under $300. And that was actually a lot of fun because there's not as many as you would think. We get a lot of requests for, hey, we need more reviews on affordable guns, sub 300, things like that. But, we've reviewed almost all of them when I made the list. In there, I mentioned guns such as the Heritage Roscoe 38 Special, which is a little bit of a throwback, to an old K-frame 38. And then we've got point YC9 and 9mm. We have the YC380 already. So, those are some options, but it's interesting. We have to list my editorial of what I found out there for under $300. Now, that's new MSRP retail pricing. That's not necessarily a used gun that you would find in an old Ivor Johnson from the turn of the 20th century. Those guns aren't in my short list. These are new guns that you can go to a gun store, you can find for less than $300. Of course, we have Gary James' Gunroom columns, probably the most popular column in Guns and Ammo magazine every month, where he identifies and evaluates and sometimes places a value on reader firearms. And then we've also got an article by Jim Tarr about line extensions. And line extensions are really what keeps platforms alive, wouldn't you say, Jack?
Absolutely. And that one really ties into your editorial. I remember when, I stopped by your office, and that was really cool to watch your process as you looked at the older issue and started manually doing the math of what, I believe it was the 1975 issue, going through that and checking the math. This is what a handgun costs. This is what the annual salary of a person in the U.S. was making that year, how many handguns they could afford, and then comparing that to what we're seeing today. And that's where a lot of those sub $300 guns come from, are line extensions of a new model that comes out. But then back to the gun room, I do want to make a point on that. I think that's one of everyone's favorite column, because it's one of my favorite columns, because there's always that hint of hope that everyone is sitting on an inherited gun from grandpa that's worth five, maybe $10,000, and there's always that hint of hope when people write in, maybe I don't want to sell it, but I want to know what is this gun actually worth. And Gary James has such an incredible process for verifying the potential value of a firearm. And yeah, most of the guns that are right in are not necessarily that expensive monetarily, but I enjoy that hint of like, well, what if I am sitting on something that's worth a lot of money and I just never realized it? And I think that's what keeps people coming back to the gun room, in part at least. And it is fun to grandpa, inherit a firearm from your dad or your grandfather, and just truly understanding what was this, how is this, how guns have changed a lot in the last 100 years, but so many people are sitting on how many firearms inherited from family, and what was this? I don't necessarily know. And Gary James has such an exciting and fascinating column that, his research process to verify that for readers, that's one of my favorite parts of the magazine.
Sure, it almost leads readers down a rabbit hole of discovery to then further research and find out more information once they know what they have. Now, looking into the table of contents, we've also got a carry rig. I reviewed the Sneaky Pete Holsters Extra Mag series, and I carried for West MP Easy Shield 9mm, which I love that pistol. It's actually a great starter pistol to introduce. I've got one in 9mm and 380, and I find a lot of people love that 380. There's just no recoil with it, and it's easy to manipulate. But I carry the Sneaky Pete holsters around, and I noticed I went to Chicago one day with this holster, and it's a big pouch that's on your hip. I actually saw someone else wearing one, and I knew what it was. I just gave a nod. He didn't understand why I was nodding at him, but it was interesting to see one of these Sneaky Pete holsters in the wild.
We had some pretty fun debate about using the Sneaky Pete in the office. I we went back and forth on. My first glance at it was like, I appreciate what it does, but as the younger generation of new gun owners, I is like, I know I wasn't quite sure I was ready for a Sneaky Pete, but then I saw you carrying it, and I saw that you could pretty quickly draw. And operate that firearm. You had, I believe, a sub 2 second draw on the Sneaky Pete, and your process for how you trained with that. It's a pretty interesting holster, and I enjoy the idea of being able to easily access your firearm, especially from the vehicle. You said it was one of the most comfortable holsters for vehicle carry, that you could access it easily. You weren't concerned about it wearing away at the leather of your center console. I was hesitant at first, but I was pretty sold after your in-depth review of the Sneaky Pete. I liked how that turned out.
You do have to take some consideration into account, though. With that particular holster, I did have difficulty uh, accessing the reload. Now, I was reviewing it because I've reviewed Sneaky Pete holsters in the past, but this was the first time that it's had the extra mag series. In other words, there's a magazine pouch that's on the back loop that you thread your belt through, and then there's also extra slot that's inside of it as well. But reaching over and trying to access it and do a quick reload wasn't easy at all. And I never really mastered that part. But it is something to consider for the sake of safety for anyone out there. Now, we also touched on a couple of bipod systems out there. One of them was from Spartan Precision, and the other was featuring Warren's Mag and their alloy rings. We also touched on their mounts and their light bipod with QD pick rail. Um, and in the suppressor column, we got involved with Mark Fingar. Now, even though he's one of our chief photographers in the magazine, he also loves to review suppressors, and he can get them pretty readily. This month, he reviewed the Griffith Armament Sport HD series in both 30 and 360 caliber. So, love shooting with suppressors. How about you, Antonio?
Oh, I'm totally hooked on shooting suppressed now. Ever since my first hunt, winning, I went out with it was 300 Win Mag too, so it was a hefty cartridge. I tried out the Silencer Central Banish Backcountry on a hunt, and that thing was night and day uh, versus shooting unsuppressed. And since then, I've been kind of quietly looking at more lists of suppressors to get a hold of in the future.
Right. Well, getting into the feature well, we've already talked about the Taurus GX2, the Ross Martin RM1S. We have an article by Beckstrain on the 338 ARC, and he tested it with the proof research conviction. Although the real story there is the ARC. And what I found was interesting, what I learned from reading it was it was the first US SOCOM cartridge, even for the other ARC cartridges. What do you think? Have you had a chance to shoot either Jack or Antonio the 338 ARC?
I haven't had the chance to shoot it myself, but Tom did an excellent job giving that an in-depth review, and I was surprised because I'm a huge fan of the 6 millimeter arc, and I just assumed that was the first ones that was the first arc that was introduced to the public at large. But it turns out it was the 338 that they started out with. But Tom was pretty impressed with the cartridge overall, I would say, and the arc family as a whole is I've really enjoyed how Hornady has been developing that line of new cartridges. But I'm a big fan of the 6 arc, and I'm very excited to see what happens with the 3.3 arc. The market will determine, if there is in fact a need for a heavy subsonic cartridge.
Certainly. It's a really cool cartridge just to even see up close. Like the whole design of it just gets your attention. And one thing that struck me is it really reminded me of the Soviet 9x39 subsonic cartridge. It's heavy, it's in a very large case, but it is quiet as all get out. And I could seriously see some hog hunters really enjoying this round for being as heavy as it is, shooting suppressed. Um, Personally, I just think it's neat. It's a cool cartridge to shoot, and it's cool to see that it's getting SOCOM recognition as well.
Well, that you mentioned hog hunting. There's an interesting point there because it was developed really to improve on the performance that we've seen with like the 300 blackout, and it shoots farther, it shoots more accurate. There's limitations to 300 blackout. It's not super accurate past 100 yards, and even it won't shoot very well beyond 200 yards. So this 338 arc kind of bridges that gap in performance and gives some suppressed options out there. So I can't wait to see what the hog hunters do with it on the commercial side, and also what projectiles develop from it. Hornady had a few of them, but yeah, a lot of promise in that one. That's a great article to read. Following that up was Craig Boddington. He reviewed a French rifle, the Chapuis Rolls. In now he actually viewed both a 30-06 and a 375 H&H. The photographs in our magazine are generally of the 375 H&H, and but he did go to Africa with the 330. I'm sorry, 30-06, one of his ubiquitous favorite cartridges out there. Also, he used the brand new Mark 6 HD. He had a 1-6 on it, really nice scope, but a little bit of a high price gun. The Chapuis guns, they come from France. They run a pretty penny. This one was about $25,000. Now, sometimes our readers don't like to read articles about these very expensive guns, but we're Guns and Ammo. We like to bring information. If it has a trigger, it qualifies to be reviewed and entered in the Guns and Ammo magazine. What do y'all think about that? Any comments?
Well, I mean, for that price point, the wood truly was absolutely gorgeous. Very high grade wood, and it's a straight pull rifle, and it's not a brand new gun, but it is just now kind of getting into the U.S. market, and that was Boddington's point. And Boddington always tells a really good story. He had a lot of strong opinions on left-handed versus right-handed firearms over the years, and that's one of his favorite features is that it's very simple to you can swap the bolt on those straight pull rifles and have it operate as a left or right-handed bolt. And so, it's practical, but it is a gorgeous rifle. It's one that I think should become a family heirloom if you ever get one. It's one that you pass down to your kids. And while straight pull rifles may not be quite as big as they are in Europe in the US as they are in Europe, they have a lot of practical value. And if you want to copy his Africa hunt, this would be a great gun to go do that with. So very gorgeous gun, to say the least.
One of my favorite articles in this entire issue, and if you look at the cover, you're going to see it. We have part 2 of the World War II sniper rifle series, and part 2 features the British Enfield number 4 Mark T. And what this series is Dave Emery and I got together last year in 2024. I did a road trip out to New Mexico, and we had a great time. We rounded up original World War II period ammunition and these World War II sniper rifles. It took us a long time to get all these components together. And then we went out to Socorro, New Mexico, which is ironically not too far where they tested the atomic bomb, that ended World War II. So what an appropriate location. And we evaluated these rifles on humanoid silhouette targets, zeroed them at 100, and then shot them for groups all the way out to 500 yards. Tested the velocities of all the ammo, learned a lot about the store and care of ammunition, because the ammunition that came out of Germany and Russia were sealed in those spam cans, and they fired as if they're brand new loads, whereas ammunition from England and the United States had a lot of hang fires and misfires that resulted from them, just due to they were stored in cardboard and cotton bandoliers through the years, so they didn't hold up against the elements for that long. But this month, yeah, the Enfield number 4 Mark T is actually one of my favorite rifles because it was intentionally developed to be a great sniper rifle. Holland was one of the major producers. They would shoot, say, 100 of these number 4 rifles, pick out the best of the 100 that would produce the tightest groups downrange, and then Holland and another company or two would then modify them for sniper use. And one of the things they would do, besides attaching a scope, they had a number 32 scope. They would actually give the stock a comb, which would elevate your face and better position it behind the scope. And I got to say, the scope was well thought out. The click adjustments were great. They were half MOA adjustments. It had a post reticle with a horizontal, and on the post, it had a pointed tip. Easy to shoot very accurately, and it was thick enough to be usable and visible even against a dark target up to 500 yards. The 303 cartridge wasn't that bad, but one of these great guns. And one of the things you're going to look forward to, we have 2 more parts of this World War II sniper rifle series, which will come in the May and the June issues. And then we're going to summarize and compare and ask everybody, what was the best World War II bolt action? I should qualify that. World War II bolt action sniper rifle. Jack, Antonio, you got any predictions of how this is going to end?
Well, and to clarify, Eric, it's it's really a whole package. It's reviewing the scope that would have been paired with that rifle, plus the rifle itself, plus the ammunition. And so, I believe Dave's, he's looking at the rifle, he's looking at how the ammunition performs, and then he's evaluating the scope as well. So it's a complete sniper rifle setup. And I'm very much looking forward to his final verdict. I want it to be the Springfield, just as an American, I want the Springfield, but we're reading the Mosin right now, and I'm inclined to think that the Mosin's going to come out on top as far as a complete sniper rifle package goes of the 4 big powers during World War II. But we'll see what Dave says with his final summary of all 4 rifles.
Right. And for those who don't understand what we're referring to, the Springfield is the Springfield Armory M1903A4, and it's got a fixed 4-power scope. And the Mosin is the Mosin Nagant 9130, and we evaluated the PU model. So there were 3 different scopes, which we can talk about before the next issue: the PE, the PEM, and the PU. Generally, those were the sniper scopes used. We evaluated the PU model, which was the most common. And we'll get to that in an upcoming conversation. Proof houses. Oh, sorry. No, go for it. You know what? I didn't give you a chance. Make a prediction for us.
It's interesting and I feel like this is for all the really deep dive World War II heads here. And it was good that you specified which models of which were being done, because it always feels like there's an asterisk when it comes to the ranking lists of guns, because all the great powers were really just kind of doing iterative works of each gun at a time. So, and in the Germans' case, you really did not even want to try shooting a 1945 Mauser versus one that was produced during their high point during the war, which I'm sure Dave talks about quite a bit regarding their production. So it's interesting to see what everyone had in their ideal setup that we'll really be comparing.
That's right. If you want to go back and read what Antonio was just mentioning, that was the Mauser K98K ZF39, meaning the scope was the ZF39 model scope. And that was a really good article. You can find that back in the March issue of Guns and Ammo. That was part 1 of this entire series. Now, Antonio, you being the digital editor, you see a lot of lists. How would the users, how would the people who read Guns and Ammo online read this article at gunsandammo.com? What's their ranking look like?
That's a tough one. I feel like there is a whole lot of pro-Americana types out there, but there are some hardcore fan bases out there for both the Mosin and the Mauser. The Mosin crowd may point out the fact that that rifle is still being used to great effect in certain areas, and still even can be found in the U.S. as a great hunting rifle too. But I think it's going to be a pretty close tie between those 3 greats. Though there is always, of course, the UK hipsters when it comes to both tanks and rifles who really enjoy the precision and the design process they went with on those rifles. But I think it's a toss-up personally.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens then. We'll see if we can't get you to put out a survey, and let's get some reader feedback on that. In terms of Proof House, we are reviewing the Rock River Arms Production 11. It's in 45, although tell you what, it's like a custom house over there. Rock River 1911s has always been really great shooting guns. The first time I really encountered them was at Camp Perry. I used to shoot some bullseye. .45 pistol matches. Used to love shooting some Rock Rivers. They were always very accurate. And they've managed now to trim their feature sets a little bit and make a very usable, carryable, almost EDC production 1911. And for lack of a better name, they're calling it the production 1911.
Yeah, Eric, I think some quick background for new listeners. The Guns and Ammo Proof House columns are written anonymously by a number of our different contributors and editors. And the author for the Rock River was pretty blown away by its performance out of the gate. I mean, this is a $1,500 range 1911 that he claims operates at the $3,000 custom level for 1911s. He tried an assortment of different magazines with it on top of the two that it was included with, and his perform. There was no hand, tension in his hand. There was no, he didn't have any slide cuts on his hand. He said it was a very comfortable pistol to shoot, even after I think he put like 2,000 rounds through the handgun over the course of his testing. So he put it through its paces, and there was no exhaustion. He wasn't tired. It was shooting that last, 100 rounds was as comfortable as shooting the first 100 rounds, was one of his big notes, takeaways from his review.
And, this is a half-inch gun at 50 yards, not 25 yards. Like if you put it in a ransom rest, this will print half-inch holes at 100 yards now, or 50 yards. So really impressive performing pistol out of it. Now, in my hands, I can probably do half-inch at best at maybe 10 yards. But anyways, and then we have a couple of columns at the end of the magazine that wraps them up every issue. I'm going to start with the back page, which is also tends to be one of the articles that everybody jumps to first. When you're at the newsstand, you just open up the back of the magazine just to see what the back page author wrote. In this case, Keith Wood writes a little bit about why California is the worst state for gun owners. And there's a lot of states out there, actually not a lot, there's a few, maybe like 10 or 15 that are fighting California to be the worst state for gun owners, but California has that title right now. Read Keith Wood's back page to see his explanation for that, and check out Tony Branco's latest cartoon to support that column. Now, taking a page back, just before Keith Wood's column, we've got the Connect column, and we added this a few years ago. This month, it is about web exclusives. Antonio Acitelli is the author of every month's Connect column. We try to link and help carry the conversation beyond the print magazine. So after you finished reading this magazine, say it's before that 30-day period when the next issue comes out, you don't have to unplug from Guns and Ammo. You can go to gunsandammo.com and see what else is happening, as well as the social media sites that we have. And we provide a great entertainment through My Outdoor TV or MOTV. And we also have Guns and Ammo TV on Sportsman Channel and Outdoor Channel. Jack Oller is one of the on-site technical advisors for Guns and Ammo TV and helps put the content for that show together, make sure everything is well and correct. Looking forward to some upcoming shows. But to wrap all this up, I'd like to hear a little bit about Antonio. Tell us a little bit about what web exclusives are out there. Of course, what's in the magazine, highlights an air pistol, the Sig Sauer M17 air pistol, which is a model after the U.S. Army standard issue full-size pistol there. But tell us what else is happening at gunsandammo.com.
Sure thing. So one of the things that sprung out when I became digital editor is I really wanted to see some of the niche interests that some of our contributors were really hankering to write about, but they'd fill up 20 pages writing about it. And so the web kind of gave them a chance to go nuts on that sort of thing. So the airgun you mentioned was part of Alfredo Rico's article. He's reviewed airguns with G&A before. He did the Umarex NCR Complete, which uses reusable canisters for its charging material. And I let him go ahead and give a full airgun starter guide. So everything you might want to know about air guns, whether it be airsoft, heavier pellet guns, CO2 guns, he covers all of it there. And he covers everything that he's reviewed in the past and has some really great breakdowns and photos kind of showing the whole world what it could be like to get into air guns like he is. A lot of passion behind it, and it's a very fun read. And on that same note, too, we recently did an article as well on the Ruger M77. So that was a gun that is really successful with Ruger, but kind of got overshadowed by the Ruger American. So in this case, we were able to show some cool examples of it, some of their new safari rifles that they put out, and our contributors were really happy to kind of talk about their own M77 builds that they've done over the years. And I guess to round it off, this is one that was showed up in this month's Connect article, is we kind of did a niche breakdown on the use of slugs and as a defensive round for shotguns. It's definitely more niche, but it's always cool to see and explore what-if scenarios, maybe including one or two on the bandolier, just in case you might need it. But we took those down to Thunder Ranch and did some really interesting stuff regarding cover, shooting out to 100 yards, and even some interesting ballistic tests regarding taking cover behind a vehicle and how the slugs could actually impact that. Buckshot does still reign supreme as the defensive load for a 12 gauge, but you might find a cool use case for one or two slugs.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, a lot of us haven't thought about slugs for defensive purposes, but I know I enjoy shotguns for home defense, and yeah, maybe having a slug available for one of the loads is an option I need to consider. Hey, thanks again, guys, Antonio and Jack, for joining us on The Buzz and having a conversation with us. Again, the April 2025 issue of Guns and Ammo. The digital issue is published on February 25th, 2025, and the print on sale date at newsstand is going to be March 4th. So don't miss a copy. And even better yet, why don't you pick up a subscription? Be sure that doesn't happen. So we'll catch you again next time. Thank you.